We're alive? Nice. Now that we've skipped the Hope right into the center of the Halcyon colony, our job here is done, so it's time to mosey on back to the ship. I go to leave through the bridge door, and every guard is now hostile, so I figured the game finally caught up with my antics here and turned the guards against me. I barely made it out of the fight alive, but I was ready to take on the rest of the ship. Then, I noticed, the guards up top only got startled because my disguise charge had ran out. So, once I was done fighting for my life, I leveled up to 27 and dumped my skill points into lockpicking. After that, I just briskly walked back to the ship like everything was cool. Back on board, Ada informs me that Dr. Wells left a message, and I hope it's important.
Thank the Lord you warned me. I was able to get some defenses up, but they might not be enough. The board has sent some serious firepower to pry me out of here. They're trying to get in here, and I'm not sure I can stop them. If they capture me, if we can't communicate again, there's something very important you need to remember. The board, all their lackeys, they're all a bunch of swine. Do you hear me? They're fucking corporate swine. You fucking pigs! I'll take you all out with me! I'll never...
It would seem the recording captured some rather dire events.
Phineas sounds like he's struggling, so I guess we should head to his orbital lab on the double. Not for his sake, but for Bubbles. I swear if they heard Bubbles. Nope, looks like Bubbles is good. Unfortunately, I was not, because I neglected to spot the 4th UDL guard crouched near me, and he alerted everyone to my presence, and they gunned me down quite readily. Let's run that back. I crept into Phineas's bulletproof booth and tried to access his personal terminal, but it needs a hacking skill of 85, or a passcode, so I search for the latter. In his quarters, I loot everything I can find, and then head back out to the booth, realizing the dead sissy pig on the slab here is lootable, and it contains the terminal passcode card. Good thing I'm wearing gloves. I access his personal terminal and check the entries, which date back to when Phineas still worked for the board. The first entry details how Phineas went against the wishes of the board and began researching how to revive the colonists on board the Hope in secret, because the board was just going to leave them on ice. The second entry details how the first 12 revival attempts ended up in the colonists liquefying in terrifying screaming agony. His final entry notes that the board found out what he's been up to in his work lab and sent troops to apprehend him, but he went into hiding in his personal orbital lab floating around the system undetected. Until now, that is. What he did for the Hope and its colonists, and he's not about to beg the board for forgiveness. That makes 2 of us. Checking the final entry on Phineas's terminal unlocked a secret compartment in his quarters, so I go have a look and find the nav key to Tartarus and a special Spacer's Choice gun called Finn's Force. Probably won't use it, but I'll take it nonetheless. We got what we came for, so it's time to creep back to the ship. Ada informs me that since we're going to be heading for a maximum security prison planet, I may want to assemble my crew to discuss matters. Sounds like a good idea to me. Alright, so what do you guys think?
So Wells has been arrested and locked up in Tartarus. This is a nightmare. That place terrifies even the most hardened criminal.
Unit was unable to complete scheduled sanitization service due to the following reason. Locked door.
But since no one ever makes it out, this is all just speculation.
Getting in is the simple part. It's getting out again that's the trouble. Trust me, I know.
Let's just do it. Kick down some doors, grab Doc Wells, and cut a path out. We don't need a plan. We got guns.
I'm with Felix on this one. Ada says we should get our affairs in order since we may be on Tartarus for a while, or forever. I confirm with everyone if they're truly up for the job.
It's the craziest plan I've ever heard. And I mean that as a compliment.
You didn't hire me to think. And I ain't about to start now. You're my boss. And I'll walk into fire with you.
I think it's insane. But maybe the colony needs a healthy dose of insanity right about now.
I know it's dangerous. And I won't lie and say I'm not scared out of my wits. But I couldn't live with myself if we didn't do something.
You're asking for more than bravery from us, Captain. But there are worse ways to go than dying for a good cause. I'm in.
Let Sam get the grime out. It's what our units do best.
The entire plan is a terrible idea, but I admire your bravado, Captain, which leads me to illogically believe, against the odds, that you will be successful.
Thank you, Ada. After our meeting is over, Nyoka says she needs a favor, so I reluctantly ask what it is, and surprisingly, her and I have something in common.
I'll be upfront with you. I hate asking for help. I hate it. Every time I give someone the opportunity to disappoint me, they seem to make it their most immediate goal.
Common ground or not, I tell her I'll follow up with her later because right now is as good a time as any to go handle that business with Dr. Chartrand. So I stash anything I don't currently have equipped, take us to Byzantium, and take a nap before heading out. I could have used Adjutant Akande's personal landing pad to take the shorter elevator ride down to my objective, but no trip to Byzantium would be complete without the good old elevator to heaven. Once I make it to street level, I dash over to Dr. Chartrand's estate and let myself in. Same as the last two times, I hit the terminal to unlock the laboratory access elevator, head down, skip the dialogue, but this time when the corporate commander says,
"Give me one reason why I should let you walk out of here alive,"
I have the option to bribe him with 3,780 identical reasons, if you catch my drift.
"That'll do, sucker."
That commander has no idea how close to death he was, but we're done here, so I take the elevator back up and exit the building. Back on board the ship, I have Ada take us to the Groundbreaker because we've got to follow up with Lilia Hagen. I head to Lilia's office at Sublight, and she, of course, is not happy.
Well, damn. Contractor grew a conscience. As your employer, I'm both angry and disappointed. I'll add that to your file.
She asks me to justify betraying my species, referencing her insane alien conspiracy theory, and I try to tell her Dr. Chartrand is actually trying to save people. But like anyone who espouses conspiracy theories, she's not receptive to ideas that don't support her insane viewpoint, so she gives me the boot. Fine by me. I have enough gas money to keep this ship going for quite a while. Once back on board the ship, I go to see Nyoka about her favor in...
Organic waste discovered in location X99-orange-527-1. Positional mess now qualified as recurring. Calculating possible solutions. Calculating. Calculating. Preparing to move all items quantified as containing alcoholic properties.
I'll come back later. I remember her saying this favor had to do with Monarch, so I take us to Fallbrook, exit the ship, and then re-enter, since doing that forces a passage of time, meaning my companions will be doing something else when I go back inside. Sure enough, Nyoka is up and about. She says she used to run with a band of hunters, and the 6 of them were on Monarch when the corporations pulled out, so they helped a whole mess of people get to safety, avoid death, or what have you.
I haven't seen 2 of them in years, and the rest I know to be dead. I'd like to gather their effects and bury them all in the same places, like the family we once were.
The task is simple. Check in on the surviving members of her team, gather the medallions of each deceased member, and give them a final burial in a proper place. First stop is Hayes' grave near their old encampment. After that, we find the trackers. The team originally camped out in a cave system on Monarch, but a Mantiqueen ran them out, so she wants to find the team's trackers, Rebecca and Anderson, enlist their help to lure out and slay the Mantiqueen, and have the burial take place in that cave. To Hayes we go then. I have a nap, shove some nutrition in my body, and head out with Nyoka. I cap the odd enemy here and there on the way to Hayes' gravesite, and once we're there, I dig up a lockbox containing his medallion which reads Charon on it, the name of their group. On to the next task.
Now, if we're gonna lure the Mantiqueen out, we'll need to find Rebecca and Anders. They took a UDL contract on Terra 2. We never heard from them again.
It sounds like we need information, and since we're on Monarch, you might guess who we had to go see. Unfortunately, due to some weird and inexplicable glitch with my recordings, only the conversation with Hiram Blythe got cut off, and everything else was fine. All you need to know is I fought my way up to Devil's Peak Station, we spoke to Hiram, and he informed us of where Rebecca and Anderson's UDL contract took them, an abandoned Spacer's Choice settlement in Emerald Vale. Once we touch down, we head straight to the settlement and I clear the area of any hostiles that might complicate things. Doing that was enough to level me up to 28, so I dump all of my skill points into hacking and unlock the Revenge perk, which increases my damage output by 20% whenever I am affected by any combat-related debuff. We locate the building, and Nyoka notices the door panel is busted up in such a way to prevent entry or exit to a structure, something Charon only did in case of real emergencies. She fixes the door panel, we enter, and sure enough, both Rebecca and Anderson are long since dead. There's a rusty journal pad next to Rebecca, so I have a look. The gist of it is, they left Monarch, a veritable hellscape, in search of somewhere less awful, so they came to Emerald Vale with all they had, only to find a different kind of hell. Weeks of daily suffering, unsure if they'd live to see the next day. Eventually, marauders caught up to them, forcing the 2 of them to take shelter here, and bust the door pad to keep the marauders out. Anderson bled out, and Rebecca didn't want a chance being alive should the Marauders break through the door, so she took herself out. Not the heroic demise Nyoka probably had in mind for her comrades, but it is what it is.
Only thing left is to take these medallions home, which means figuring out how to bait the Mana Queen out of our old base. The most pissed off I've ever seen a queen was when a foreign species was on her soil. I'd wager the stench of a primal might do the trick.
We need primal pheromones, and we've got primals like 50 yards away here in the Vale, but she says we have to head to Scylla to get them from those primals. Makes no sense to me, but off we go. Once back on board the ship, I take us to Scylla, and then I see Felix by the door.
I can't believe I wanted to shake his hand. I need a shower. It makes you wonder if being a treacherous, two-timing coward is some sort of contagious disease, or if he was just born that way.
I have no idea who he's talking about. Come to find out, Graham Bryant was some kind of personal hero for him. Felix bought into his whole change Halcyon for the better platform and really thought he'd be the one to do it. Still, we've been done with that whole deal for quite some time now, so I don't know why he's just now mentioning it. I bid Felix farewell, and Nyoka and I head out. With LMG in hand, I gun down everything on my way to the first group of primals, and then gun them down too. Rinse and repeat a couple more times until I've got the pheromones. I hand them over to Nyoka, and she briefly goes over the plan for when we reach her old base.
I can get us in the door, but we'll have to shoot our way through the Queen's brood to get to the center. We'll set the bait there. Password to the door is Charon.
I get us back to the ship, take us to Fallbrook, and we immediately set out for the old Charon base. I didn't stop to sleep after the long trip back to Monarch, but I should be alright. All I have to do is keep Nyoka alive and fight off an army of Mantisaurs. Piece of cake. We reach the base, I enter the password into the door terminal, and we enter. The caves look narrow, so it should be like shooting fish in a barrel if I draw the hordes back to me. I pop one to get their attention, and then swap to the LMG and gun them all down when they stack up near each other. The large room here has a lot of bodies and containers, so I get to work looting. I find the remains of the last two Charon members, Opal and Rebecca's sister Clara, and take their medallions. Once I loot everything else in here, Nyoka and I head to the center of the room, and she prepares the pheromones. She begins to reminisce about how it is that Charon wound up down here in the cave in the first place. Way back when, her and Hayes ducked into here one night just to get some rest in a relatively safe location, and grew to like it, mainly because the debilitating stink of sulfur that permeates the Monarch air isn't as heavy down here.
Monarch folks often joke about it. Not because of the smell or the grittiness it leaves in your throat. Not because of the headaches or the coughing. It's because there's no escaping it. It's life here, and there ain't anything you can do about it. But here, somehow the sulfur never made it. The nights we spent in here felt like vacations.
Over time, through the process of hiring people to help build a base here, and through the chaos from the corporations pulling out, Charon gained its 4 other members.
Clara, Hayes, Anders, Rebecca, Opal, and me. 6 folks, 1 name. 1 family. Charon. Despite Monarch trying to kill us day in and day out, we managed to belong.
I'd say it's about time to kill some stuff, so I end the conversation, and here comes the Manta Queen and her brood. Nyoka goes running in, obviously ignorant to what difficulty this is on, so I designate a spot for her to sit back while I get to work. I enter TTD and cripple every enemy in my sight to give me time to kill them before they reach Nyoka. Since they're crippled, and Nyoka can still shoot, she helps dispatch the lesser enemies. The Manta Queen still hasn't advanced far enough to have line of sight on Nyoka, probably due to being crippled, maimed, blinded, on fire, and suffering 2 different armor debuffs, so I lay on the trigger. I finished off 2 Manta Pillars that were crouched down behind the Manta Queen, and then she became inflicted with fear, so I took a second to reload and then emptied another box of bullets into her back. After 1 last reload and 16 more bullets spent, the bitch went down. I claimed the spoils of war from the Queen and her brood, and then went to talk to Nyoka.
I wish these were more auspicious circumstances, but at least we're all here. This bringing them together, burying them. This is the kind of thing Hayes would have done. That makes it stupid. By all accounts, we should have left well enough alone, but that also makes it right. Captain, thank you.
Nyoka then asks if we can take a bit to bury Opal and Clara before she lays out the medallions, but I tell her to keep the medallions on her, just to remind her of the good time she had with everyone.
Huh. That ain't a bad point. All right, Captain. Thanks.
Once all said and done, I take a moment to inspect what's written on everyone's grave marker, and that's quest complete. I need sleep, so we exit the cave, I take us back to the ship, and prepare for the final fight. I've got to fight my way through the most heavily fortified structure in the entirety of the Halcyon colony and rescue Phineas, so I head to the workbench to make sure my armor and weapons are fixed up. I know there will be mechanicals, so I change my plasma rifle to shock damage for them, leaving my LMG and marksman rifle for use against any human targets, since they are far more dangerous. This mission is very long and the chances of me dying are high, so once I'm done preparing, I plot a course for Tartarus. The game warns me that this is the last part of the story and neither of the DLCs can be accessed after this point, which may complicate the plans I had to cover those next. I hit continue, the game saves, and we arrive. Just to hammer home the fact that I cannot leave Tartarus from this point on, Ada says,
"Please be advised that electrical storms on the surface of Tartarus make departure impossible at this time."
And then the prison's docking authority calls to say,
"Your presence here is an explicit violation of UDL corporate policy. You are hereby confined to your docking platform until a ticket detailing your crimes has been filed and notarized, at which point your vessel will be seized and you will be executed."
At this point, I expected no less. Once I disembark, it's guns up on sight. I shoot my way up the docking platform, keeping the enemies at range while I pick them off with my marksman rifle before advancing. The first batch goes down pretty fast, but the second group further up is larger and a bit stronger, so they got me. Good thing I didn't get too far. I tried the same tactic again, just with a slower approach up the docking platform, and I eliminated every target with barely a scratch. I'm saying it now, this marksman rifle was worth every bit. Since this is the end, and nothing I gain here will come with me after I'm finished, I no longer need to prioritize looting everything as much as I have previously, just ammo and healing items. After I finish checking out the docking platform security station, I make my way down to an elevator after catching a glimpse of where it is I have to go. I'm glad we're not having this battle outdoors. Once downstairs, I enter what looks to be a cargo bay, crawling with guards. Since some enemy groups seem to be deaf to the nearby slaughter of others, I start the fight from the place where I entered, and suddenly enemies rush me from the way I came in, and I really wish I knew how they did that. My carelessness almost got me killed, but I barely managed to take them out without alerting any of the other nearby enemies. Now I can get a look at the rest of the room from a safe vantage point, and pick off any enemies I can see. When enemies can't get to you, they run for cover, but sometimes they'll just stand out in the open and stare at you, like this guy, and you can kill them with little to no trouble. I carefully pick off every enemy my compass had highlighted, and then progress through the bulkhead doors where I am met with a room full of vending machines. I'm already well stocked on ammo and food, and they don't have anything else I could need, so I continue deeper into the pit. I take 2 steps and suddenly lock eyes with an enemy, so I shoot him before he can make any noise. Luckily, I didn't alert anyone else nearby. Each floor in here has a walkway that goes around it with a single bridge in the middle to accommodate traffic to either side. I'm safe where I am, which means when I shoot the next enemy, they'll all have to funnel down the bridge towards me, making my job much easier. Once I dispatch the group of guards in front of me, I level up to 29. Since this level up won't be saved after this ordeal is done, I can really only improve my skills that may help me in the moment, so I raise Persuasion to 70. Before I cross the bridge, I backtrack to where there's a locked room, and it's hackable, so I let myself in. All that's here is a terminal and a data pad noting manifests of transports coming and going from Tartarus. In other words, useless to me. The other side of this room is not locked, so I can now sneak up on the next group of enemies. One is facing the other way, so I sneak up on him. I can't pickpocket him successfully, so I bonk him, but that wasn't enough to kill him, so I swing on him haphazardly, and that's the end of him. Continuing my exploration of this floor's walkways, I reach a room that looks like a workstation of sorts. I loot food and ammo, and notice some pings on my compass, so I crouch and proceed carefully. There's an employee in the room here, and she doesn't seem to be hostile, so I talk to her.
I'm working as fast as I can, all right? If y'all would quit bothering me, I'd get this done sooner.
I don't know if it's the fact that I'm wearing a UDL commander's armor, but Melody here thinks I'm a UDL guard. She's working to fix the forced pacification system, which basically gasses the inmates if they attempt an uprising. There's a terminal next to her with the option to deliver the gas, but it doesn't work. That's when I remember, if you sided with the board for your playthrough, Phineas takes Sophia Akande hostage and brings her here, to Tartarus. Instead of having to fight Corporation security, like now, Phineas releases and arms the inmates, and they would be the main enemy force around here, hence why this gas system would be important. I figured the gas may still be useful against the guards, so I try to pickpocket Melody for the password to the gas controls, but I'm unsuccessful. Cowabunga it is then. I leave the workstation, take the lift up to the next floor, and prepare myself for another fight when I suddenly hear,
"Let's go, troops. Stellar Base counting on us."
Here come the Van Noys and a squad of Iconoclast troops sent by Zora Blackwood to help me out. With them backing me up, we made short work of every enemy on this floor. I stink my way through some back rooms and almost get killed when I find a room full of guards that didn't hear what the hell just happened out there. Luckily, they all tried to funnel through the same doorway after me, so they went down fairly easily. With them out of the way, I unseal the exit door, and who do we have here?
Well, look who it is. I'll be damned. I was prepping the studio for our announcement, and here you are as a bonus. When you go off and get yourself shot, try to avoid taking one to the face. I'll want it recognizable to show to my citizens.
Chairman Rockwell was in the middle of prepping for his broadcast. You know, the one where he tells the entire colony that the board plans to freeze them all since there are far too many mouths to feed. The chairman has lost all hope for the future of this colony, so he sees no shame in the course of action he and the board are pursuing.
I don't know if you've noticed, Captain, but Halcyon's pretty much a lost cause.
I could convince him otherwise, but none of my dialogue skills are of sufficient level to do so, so I leave him be. After we're done here, nothing he does will matter much anyway. I take the lift up to the next floor.
All right, MSI. I'm not one for rousing speeches, but the captain needs our help. So, get in there and fight!
And here comes a squad of MSI troops, courtesy of Sanjar Nandi. Thanks to them, all enemies on this floor are swiftly handled. I am now clear to ride the central elevator up to where Phineas is being held. Once off the elevator, Adjutant Akande appears on the monitor ahead of me.
Captain, you have an uncanny talent for complicating my life. You've been working with Dr. Wells from the beginning. When we moved to arrest him, he was prepared. I lost good soldiers in the attempt. You've disrupted the balance of power. You've upset the natural order of things. You've introduced uncertainty, and there is nothing I despise more than uncertainty.
We can see Phineas strapped to a chair behind Sophia, being convinced to side with the board and fix some of the damage we've caused them. But if he was stubborn enough to come this far, I'm not too worried. The adjutant lets me know what's waiting for me up ahead, and I already know this fight all too well.
This prison is equipped with an automechanical warden. I've had it programmed to eliminate you on sight and rinse your remains down a drain. And don't worry, I will inform Dr. Wells that you died heroically or something.
Since my very first level up, I've been unlocking perks with this exact fight in mind, because it has been a pain in the ass every other time I've beaten this game. I repair all of my equipped guns, and then scarf down some food for some health regeneration buffs. As soon as the big door to the boss room opens, I enter TTD, cripple the boss, and skip behind cover. The boss will chase you around the arena, attempting to shoot at you or ram into you, becoming stunned if he rams into a wall instead. For every third or quarter of his health that you take, a squad of combat drones are released. They are much better at chasing you down and do just as much damage as the boss, so losing sight of them is not recommended. If you are a focused mind and reactive body, you will prevail. All the boss had to loot was the key to the exit door, so I take it and get going. I make my way up through a very lavish hallway to the room where Phineas should be, and the second I pop the door open, Adjutant Akande opens fire. I wasn't expecting that, but I guess even she knows when it's time to stop talking and start shooting. I enter TTD and deliver one fully charged plasma blast to her face. Just like that, she is no longer with us. I take the key to Phineas's restraints off of her and release our beloved mad scientist from his torture chamber.
You don't know how glad I am to see you. You did the right thing. Akande was a monster. Her death was much deserved, and long overdue.
We haven't even left the exceedingly dangerous prison planet yet, and Phineas is already saddling me with more problems. Problems which we were somewhat aware of already.
Earth has gone dark. We haven't received a single message in 3 years. There's been no communication, no signals, nothing. 2 years ago, the Earth's Directorate's frigate disappeared on their way back to Earth. We don't know what they discovered when they arrived, or if they arrived at all.
That is an issue for sure, but an issue for another time. Probably in the next game, whenever that comes out. After everything that's happened, I think I deserve a break.
You've succeeded where anyone else would have failed, including me. We must begin the revival process immediately, starting with the Hope's brightest minds, and then we're going to fix this damn colony, one problem at a time. We're going to need a leader, and I can't imagine a better person for the job than you. What do you say, old friend? Will you help us?
What the hell? I got nothing else going on.
When I revived you, I thought you were going to help me save this colony. I was wrong. I had our roles reversed, you see. You're the one who's going to save us all. I'm just the one who set you on your path. You're the best thing to ever happen to Halcyon. If you want to take it upon yourself to lead this colony, you have my support. We're not a colony any longer, are we? Our last connection to Earth has been severed, and so we have been set free. Our future is uncertain, and no one knows what tomorrow holds. Exciting, isn't it?
The OSI teaches that everything in the universe happens according to the grand plan. But the stranger that arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The events on Tartarus brought about the end of the Board's authority. But the Board's mistakes would haunt the colony for decades to come. The damage they left behind would require the work of a generation to repair. Dr. Phineas Wells began reviving a handful of the Hope's colonists. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and intellectuals. They were among the brightest minds the Earth had ever sent out into the stars. The Hope scientists and engineers woke up in a colony descending headlong into total collapse. With no way to return to Earth, they had no choice but to band together and devote themselves to the cause of saving Halcyon. The people of Halcyon were nothing if not hardy. In the absence of the Board's authority, many of the colony's settlements banded together with a single purpose in mind: survival. Life was especially hard in the years to come. Some towns dissolved by attrition and starvation, but most of them found a way to carry on. In the years to come, Halcyon was forced to reckon with its newfound freedom. The Board was gone, and for better or worse, the colony was responsible for its own destiny. Between MSI's worker-centric policies and the iconoclast's manpower, Sanjar and Zora were able to rally many of the Terra 2 townships to their cause. MSI's workforce swelled, and the iconoclasts enjoyed a significant surge in their ranks. The Board was too distracted by infighting and internal politics to stop MSI from becoming a powerful corporation and a refuge for townships that might have fallen through the cracks. Consumed by paranoia, Lilia Hagen took Sublight Salvage in a controversial direction, openly accusing Board officials of an extraterrestrial conspiracy. One day, an accident at the Groundbreaker's docking bay silenced her forever. Time would tell if her replacement could keep the Sublight family together. The collapse of Edgewater left its workers bereft of any purpose in life. Most of them made their way to Adelaide McDevitt's camp, hoping to ingratiate themselves into her favor. Adelaide accepted only a few to her community. The rest were turned away, and likely died of starvation. Nevertheless, Adelaide's camp grew into a well-established town. Adelaide McDevitt refused to cooperate with the ongoing effort to save Halcyon from collapse. A sympathetic deserter stole a copy of her research and delivered it to the Hope's scientists. It is unclear how useful Adelaide's research was. An optimistic estimate suggests her work may have bought Halcyon another few years of survival. Adelaide would never know. She died that winter. Junlei Tennyson fought to protect the Groundbreaker's independence. While the Board's influence faded, mechanical difficulties forced her to rely on parts that only corporations could provide. The cost was high, and time would tell if Junlei could balance the work with her aspirations for a better future. The rediscovery of the Hope and the abandonment of the Lifetime Employment Program forced Byzantium to come to terms with some uncomfortable realities about the state of Halcyon. While Byzantines were reluctant to surrender the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to, the board's diminished authority gave them little choice in the matter. Nearly everyone had to learn to make do with less. Some even had to get jobs. It was a dark time indeed. Your influence shifted Ellie's perspective. She finally admitted, albeit grudgingly, that she just might need other people. Sometimes. With a steady income from the life insurance payouts, she was finally able to afford a ship of her own. She hired a small crew and flew supply missions to communities on the fringe. Some of them were even legal. Life in Halcyon was sobering for Felix Millstone. The grand revolution he dreamed of never came. There was no great awakening for the colony, no celebrations in the streets. There was only the hard, desperate work of trying to repair a broken colony. Felix never had a head for numbers, but if there was labor to be done, he was there to help. Eventually, Felix realized that the work of a revolution was done with two hands. After all he'd seen and heard adventuring with you, the vicar Maximilian de Soto renounced his faith and joined the effort to rebuild the colony. Ironically, he finally found the joy that had eluded him over the course of his life, and realized that perhaps he was always meant to be just a simple laborer after all. He quickly dismissed the idea. Though Parvati eventually grew comfortable aboard the Unreliable, she never quite came out of her shell. She seemed to prefer the company of Ada to the crew, and she could often be found neck-deep in cables and grease, telling Ada funny stories from her childhood. While the colony fell into chaos, she found an island of relative peace with Ada, and they formed an unusual bond. She decided to remain aboard the Unreliable permanently as its chief and sole engineer. Nyoka returned to Monarch to take another crack at making a permanent life for herself. She formed the Charon Group, a mercenary outfit of ragtag survivalists and wilderness experts. Anyone in need of a guide, or just looking to throw back a beer and swap stories, could find her camping on the trail or clearing an infestation. The SAM unit that accompanied you spread awareness of the product line's superior sanitation and maintenance capabilities across what was left of the colony. This led to a boost in SAM unit sales. Did you know that SAM units are the longest-lasting, toughest-acting cleaning solution in Halcyon? Minister Clark was released from house arrest, and his contact with you gave him a sense of renewed purpose and vigor. Once it became clear that no help would be coming from Earth, he threw his considerable efforts and talents into helping Halcyon manage the crisis before it. As for Dr. Phineas Wells, he spent his remaining years in his orbital lab. He eventually came to terms with his own past, and was able to forgive the mistakes of his younger self by devoting his remaining years to serving the colony. In the end, Dr. Wells was able to save every scientist and engineer aboard the Hope. Over the next decade, nearly all of the Hope's remaining colonists were successfully revived. Halcyon saw a period of rapid technological and scientific advancement. Breakthroughs in dietary supplements saved the colony from starvation. Geoengineering projects and social reforms began to change the structure and character of the colony. Dr. Wells laid the groundwork for the project to save the colony, but he would never live to see the fruits of his labor. He passed away a few years later. His work was carried on by the scientists and engineers he revived. Today, Halcyon has stabilized. The people of the colony work hard to adapt to their new circumstances. Nearby colonies send aid and supplies. Life will never be easy in Halcyon, but for the first time in its history, there exists a sense of real, genuine hope about the future. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? Long after Wells passed away, You carried on his work with more energy, determination, and brilliance than he could ever muster. The years that followed were hard, but Halcyon survived by the efforts of the Hope's most promising colonists, the greatest of which was you. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.
Boy, oh boy. I had no idea the gargantuan task ahead of me when I set out to make this series of videos, but here we are, at the end. I think I found my footing as far as how to structure a series like this for the next time I decide to do one. To those of you who have watched every episode from start to finish, you are the reason why I put in the work. So thank you. This has been your captain, Cygnus Jason, over and out.